The memorial service for my husband, Marcus, was supposed to be dignified, quiet, a celebration of a man who had built a successful architecture firm from nothing and had loved his family fiercely for 23 years. Instead, it became the day my sister, Rebecca, revealed exactly who she had always been. We were halfway through the service when she stood up. Not quietly, not respectfully, she stood up during Pastor Williams's reading of Marcus's favorite Bible verse and cleared her throat loudly. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice cutting through the sanctuary. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something everyone needs to know." I looked up from the front pew, confused. Rebecca stood in the third row, wearing black but somehow making it look celebratory. Her husband, Derek, sat beside her, looking uncomfortable. "Rebecca, this isn't the time," my mother started. "Actually, it's exactly the time," Rebecca interrupted, pulling papers from her designer purse. "Because everyone here is mourning Marcus and supporting Claire, but they should know the truth." She held up the documents. "Marcus signed everything over to me last month. The house, the business, his investments. All of it. Everything." The sanctuary went silent. 200 people stared at her, then at me. I felt my mother's hand grip mine. My 17-year-old son, Jake, sitting on my other side, tense like he was about to stand up and defend me. "Rebecca, sit down," I said quietly. "No, I won't sit down." Her voice rose triumphantly. "You've always been the perfect sister, perfect wife, perfect everything." But Marcus knew the truth. He knew you never appreciated what you had. That's why he made arrangements to ensure I take care of his legacy properly. She waved the papers again. "It's all here. Signed, witnessed, notarized. The house on Maple Street? Mine. Bennett Architecture? Mine. His entire portfolio? Mine." People were murmuring now. I could feel their eyes on me, wondering if it was true, if my sister was really that cruel, or if there was some truth to her claims. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick text. "She's here, making her move. Come now." Then I looked at my sister and smiled, actually smiled. "Are you done?" I asked calmly. Rebecca's confidence flickered. "Did you hear what I said? Everything is mine." "I heard you," I interrupted. "Everyone heard you. You just announced at your brother-in-law's memorial service that you're stealing his widow's home and business." I paused. "Now sit down and wait." "Wait for what?" "For Marcus's lawyer to arrive." I checked my phone. "He should be here in about 3 minutes. Then we can all see your documents together." Rebecca's face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Fine, let him come. These documents are legal and binding." "We'll see," I said, turning back to face the front. Pastor Williams, looking deeply uncomfortable, tried to resume the service, but the damage was done. The next 15 minutes were filled with whispers and stolen glances. When the sanctuary doors opened and Leonard Hastings, Marcus's lawyer of 20 years, walked in with his briefcase, the whispers stopped. Leonard was 72, silver-haired, and had a reputation as the most meticulous attorney in the state. He walked directly to me, offered his condolences, then turned to face the congregation. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, his voice carrying authority. "But I understand there's been a claim made regarding Mr. Bennett's estate." Rebecca stood up again, energized. "Yes, I have documents here proving Marcus left everything to me." "May I see them?" Leonard asked politely. Rebecca marched down the aisle and handed him the papers with a triumphant expression. Leonard adjusted his glasses and read through them carefully. The sanctuary was so quiet I could hear the pages rustling. After what felt like an eternity, Leonard looked up. "Mrs. Morrison," he said to Rebecca, using her married name. "These documents are interesting. They appear to show that Marcus Bennett signed over certain assets to you approximately 5 weeks ago." Rebecca smiled victoriously. "Exactly." "However," Leonard continued, his voice hardening, "I have several concerns. First, the signature doesn't quite match Mr. Bennett's standard signature." He pulled out a document from his briefcase. "This is Mr. Bennett's actual will, updated 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks after your documents were allegedly signed. Notice the difference in signature?" He held up both documents. Even from my seat, I could see the discrepancy. The signature on Rebecca's papers was shakier, less confident. "Second," Leonard continued, "your documents were notarized by a James Patterson. I've already verified that Mr. Patterson's notary license was suspended 6 months ago for improper notarization practices." Rebecca's face was losing color. "That's That's not possible. Third, and most importantly, Leonard's voice was iced now. Marcus Bennett was in my office 3 weeks ago, specifically because he discovered that someone had attempted to forge documents in his name. He was very clear about who he suspected and why. He pulled out another document. This is a police report Marcus filed 2 weeks before his death. In it, he states that his sister-in-law, Rebecca Morrison, approached him multiple times requesting financial help, loans, and eventually asking to be named in his will. When he refused, he suspected she might attempt to forge documents. The sanctuary erupted in gasps and whispers. "That's a lie," Rebecca shouted. "He never filed any police report. I have a copy right here, filed with the City Police Department, case number 2024-3847. Leonard's voice was calm but devastating. Marcus also installed security cameras in his home office after his laptop was accessed without authorization. Those cameras captured interesting footage. He pulled out a tablet and turned it toward Rebecca. "This is from 4 weeks ago. That's you, Mrs. Morrison, in Marcus's office, going through his files. The timestamp shows it was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, a time when you knew Claire was at her mother's physical therapy appointment and Marcus was at a job site." On the screen, clearly visible, was Rebecca rifling through Marcus's desk. My hands started shaking. I hadn't known about any of this. Marcus had been protecting me from the truth, not wanting to cause family drama while he was alive. Marcus came home early that day. Leonard continued. He found files out of place and checked the cameras. That's when he discovered what you've been doing. Rebecca's husband, Derek, stood up. "Rebecca, what did you do?" "I didn't. I was just..." Rebecca stammered, her confidence completely shattered. "The real will," Leonard said, turning to address the entire congregation, "leaves everything to Claire Bennett, Marcus's wife of 23 years, with trust established for their children. Rebecca Morrison is not mentioned anywhere in the document except for one specific clause." He read aloud, "If my sister-in-law, Rebecca Morrison, attempts to claim any portion of my estate through fraudulent means, I direct my executor to pursue criminal charges to the fullest extent of the law and to ensure she receives no financial benefit whatsoever from my estate, including any gifts or bequests that might have otherwise been considered." The sanctuary was dead silent. Furthermore, Leonard continued, "Marcus left a letter to be read in the event that Rebecca made any claims. Would you like me to read it, Claire?" I nodded, unable to speak. Leonard pulled out an envelope and opened it carefully. Marcus's handwriting was on the paper inside. I'd recognize it anywhere. "To my beloved Claire," Leonard read, "if you're hearing this letter, it means Rebecca has done exactly what I feared. I'm sorry I never told you about her requests for money, her attempts to access my files, her suggestions that she should be more involved in the business. I didn't want to cause family conflict while I was alive to manage it." Tears were streaming down my face now. Jake's arm was around my shoulders. "Rebecca has always been jealous of you," Leonard continued reading. "Jealous of our marriage, our home, our success. I watched it grow over the years, tried to help when I could. But she wanted more than help. She wanted what we built together. She couldn't accept that success comes from hard work and partnership, not manipulation and shortcuts." Rebecca was crying now too, but her tears looked more like rage than remorse. "I've documented everything. Her requests, her lies, her attempt to access my computer files. Leonard has all the evidence needed to prove any documents she presents are fraudulent. I've also made sure our assets are protected in ways she can't access or forge." Leonard paused, then read the final lines. "Claire, you are the love of my life. Everything I built was for you and our children. Don't let anyone, especially family, make you doubt that. You deserve everything, and I made sure you'd get it. I love you, always, Marcus." I was sobbing openly now. My mother was crying. Even strangers in the congregation were wiping their eyes. Leonard folded the letter carefully and returned it to the envelope, then handed it to me. "This is yours." Then he turned back to Rebecca. "Mrs. Morrison, I need to inform you that I'm required to turn over all evidence of your forgery attempt to the district attorney's office. Marcus's police report, the security footage, and the fraudulent documents you just presented will all be part of a criminal investigation." "No," Rebecca whispered. "No, I didn't." "You did," Derek said quietly, standing up. "Oh God, Rebecca, you actually did this." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Claire, I swear I didn't know. I never would have." "I know, Derek. I managed to say. He turned to Rebecca. We're leaving. Now. And when we get home, you're going to tell me everything. They left through a side door, Rebecca crying, Derek's face set in stone. Pastor William slowly returned to the podium. I think we should take a short break before continuing the service. The memorial service resumed 20 minutes later. Most people stayed, though a few left, probably to spread the gossip. I didn't care anymore. Leonard sat beside me for the rest of the service. During the break, he explained everything Marcus had done in those final weeks. He suspected something was wrong about 2 months ago, Leonard said. Rebecca had been showing up at his office frequently, always with some excuse, needed advice on a business opportunity, wanted to understand his portfolio structure, asked detailed questions about how his assets were titled. Why didn't he tell me? I asked. He planned to, but then he found out about the cancer. Leonard's voice was gentle. Stage 4, inoperable. The doctors gave him 3 to 6 months. He told me he didn't want to waste what time he had left dealing with Rebecca's schemes. He wanted to spend it with you and the kids. My throat tightened. Marcus had known he was dying and had spent his final weeks not just with us, but protecting us. He came to my office the day after he caught her on camera, Leonard continued. We updated everything, his will, his business succession plan, asset protections. He even recorded a video statement explaining everything, just in case. He thought of every contingency. That sounds like Marcus, I whispered. He loved you very much, Leonard said. Every document, every protection he put in place. It was all about making sure you and the children would be secure. He even set up a trust that can't be touched by lawsuits or claims, ensuring your children's education and your future are protected no matter what. 3 days after the memorial service, Rebecca was arrested. The evidence was overwhelming. The forged documents, the security footage, the police report, even her own public confession at the memorial service in front of 200 witnesses. Derek filed for divorce a week later. He came to see me, apologetic and ashamed. I should have seen it, he said, sitting in my kitchen. The way she talked about your house, your cars, Marcus's business. I thought it was just normal envy, you know? Sisters comparing lives. I never thought she'd actually. Neither did I admitted. She's my sister. I trusted her. Marcus knew, though, Derek said quietly. He told me once, about 6 months ago, that I should keep a closer eye on our finances. He said Rebecca had expensive tastes and might not always be honest about where the money was going. I thought he was just being overprotective. He paused. Turns out she'd been hiding credit card debt from me, $20,000. I wasn't entirely surprised. Rebecca had always lived beyond her means. I'm sorry, Derek said again, for what she did, for what she tried to do at the service. That was unconscionable. You're not responsible for her choices, I said. You didn't know. Still, he stood to leave. If you or the kids ever need anything, please let me know. I may not be family legally anymore, but I'd like to think we can still be friends. I'd like that too. Rebecca's case went to trial 8 months later. She was convicted of forgery, attempted fraud, and filing false documents. The judge, clearly disgusted by her actions at the memorial service, sentenced her to 3 years in prison and ordered her to pay restitution. She tried to appeal, claiming she'd been having a mental health crisis. The appeal was denied. My mother took it hard. She's still my daughter, she kept saying. I don't understand where I went wrong. You didn't go wrong, Mom, I told her. Rebecca made her own choices. But to do that at Marcus's memorial service, Mom's voice broke. That poor man wasn't even buried yet, and she tried to steal from his widow, from you, her own sister. I didn't have words to comfort her. Some betrayals are too deep for explanations. 2 years have passed since Marcus died. The house is quieter now. Jake is in college, studying architecture like his father. My younger daughter, Emma, is thriving in high school. President of the art club Marcus always encouraged her to join. Bennett Architecture continues to operate. I'm not an architect, but Marcus had trained an excellent management team. I serve as owner and board chair, making sure his vision and values continue. The business has actually grown. It turns out the story of Marcus protecting his family even after death resonated with people. We've had dozens of clients specifically request us because they admired his integrity. Leonard still handles all our legal matters. He's become a friend, someone who shares stories about Marcus I never knew, including how Marcus once told him that the smartest thing he'd ever done was marry me. He said you were his partner in every sense. Leonard told me over coffee last month that you'd built everything together, even if your name wasn't on all the paperwork. He wanted to make sure that was reflected in how his estate was handled. Rebecca gets out of prison next year. I don't know if I'll ever speak to her again. Mom visits her occasionally and says she's remorseful, that she's in therapy and understands what she did was wrong. I hope that's true, but I also know that some relationships, once broken, can't be repaired. What I do know is that Marcus loved me, that he protected me, that even facing death, his final thoughts were about ensuring our family's security and happiness. And I know that when my sister stood up at his memorial service and tried to steal everything we'd built together, Marcus had already won. Because love, real love, plans ahead. It protects. It endures. Even after death, Marcus was still taking care of us. And that, more than any house or business or inheritance, is the real legacy he left behind. My father's 75th birthday party was supposed to be a celebration. We'd rented out his favorite Italian restaurant, invited 40 family members and close friends, and I'd spent weeks planning every detail. Dad loved celebrations. He always said life was too short not to mark the important moments. What I didn't plan for was my sister Vanessa turning it into her own personal victory lap. We were halfway through dinner, Dad laughing at my uncle's terrible jokes, when Vanessa stood up. She was wearing red, bold, attention-grabbing red, and she tapped her wine glass with a fork until the room went quiet. "I have an announcement," she said, her voice carrying across the restaurant. "Actually, Dad and I have an announcement." Dad looked confused. I felt my stomach tighten. Vanessa pulled folded papers from her designer purse and held them up. "Yesterday, Dad and I went to see his lawyer, and he made some important decisions about his future and ours." "Vanessa," I started, but she talked over me. "Dad signed a new will. After a lot of discussion about who's really been there for him, who really cares about his legacy, he decided that everything should go to me." She smiled triumphantly. "The house, the business, his investments, all of it. I'll be taking over Morrison Manufacturing and I'll be managing the estate." The room erupted. Cousin Diane started crying. My brother Marcus jumped to his feet. "That's insane. Dad, you didn't." "This is ridiculous," my Aunt Carol shouted. "Edward, tell her this isn't true." But Dad just sat there, looking bewildered and small. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his water glass. "Dad?" I asked quietly, leaning toward him. "Did you sign something yesterday?" I think so." His voice was uncertain. "Vanessa said it was important. Papers about the business. She said you agreed, Lauren. She said everyone agreed." My heart sank. I looked at Vanessa, who avoided my eyes. "Dad," I said gently, "I never agreed to anything. Vanessa didn't discuss this with any of us." "Yes, I did." Vanessa's voice rose defensively. "I told you weeks ago that Dad needed to update his estate planning. You said he needed to review his documents," I corrected, "not that he was signing everything over to you exclusively." The restaurant had gone quiet except for my family's shocked voices overlapping. Marcus was demanding to see the papers. My uncle was on his phone, presumably calling a lawyer. Aunt Carol was crying openly. I pulled out my phone and sent a text. She did it. "Brought the papers to the party. Please come now." Then I looked at my sister. "Vanessa, when exactly did you take Dad to the lawyer?" "Yesterday, like I said, 2:00 appointment." "And where was I?" "How should I know? You're always busy with your perfect career." "I was at the hospital," I said calmly. "At Dad's neurology appointment. The one I told you about 3 weeks ago. The one you said you couldn't attend because of work." Vanessa's face flickered with something. Guilt? Fear? "I forgot about that appointment." "No, you didn't. You deliberately scheduled the lawyer meeting while Dad was supposed to be at a medical appointment. An appointment that would have shown you something very important." "What are you talking about?" But her voice had lost its confidence. The restaurant door opened. Dr. Patricia Chen, Dad's neurologist, walked in carrying a file folder. Behind her was Samuel Morrison, Dad's actual lawyer, not whatever notary Vanessa had found. "Dr. Chen," I said, standing, "thank you for coming. I know this is highly unusual." "Given the circumstances, I thought it was necessary," she replied, her expression serious. She looked at Dad with concern. "Edward, how are you feeling?" "Confused," Dad admitted. "Lauren, why is Dr. Chen here? Am I supposed to be at the hospital?" "No, Dad. But I asked Dr. Chen to come because I think everyone needs to understand what's been happening with your health. Vanessa's face had gone pale. This is a private family matter, which involves Dad's medical capacity, Dr. Chen interrupted firmly. Something I take very seriously. She turned to address the room. I'm Dr. Patricia Chen, Edward Morrison's neurologist. I've been treating him for the past 8 months. The room went completely silent. Edward was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's disease in January, Dr. Chen continued. The progression has been moderate but concerning. We've documented increasing memory issues, confusion about recent events, and periods of disorientation. No, Vanessa whispered. That's not. He's fine. He's completely fine. He has good days and bad days, Dr. Chen said. But legally, he's been deemed incapable of making major financial decisions without a medical evaluation confirming his capacity at the time of signing. That evaluation should have been done by his primary physician or myself. She looked directly at Vanessa. When did you say Edward signed these documents? Yesterday, Vanessa said weakly, at 2 p.m. That's interesting, Samuel Morrison, the lawyer, spoke up. Because I've received no request to prepare new estate documents for Mr. Morrison. I've been his attorney for 30 years, and he's never made major changes without consulting me first. He held out his hand. May I see those documents? Vanessa clutched the papers tighter. They're private. If they're legitimate, they're not private, Samuel said firmly. They're legal documents that would supersede the estate plan I helped Edward create. I have every right to review them. Marcus stepped forward and took the papers from Vanessa's hand. She didn't resist, just stood there, looking smaller by the second. Samuel reviewed the documents, his frown deepening. This was prepared by Davidson Legal Services. They're not estate attorneys. They're a budget notary service that handles basic documents. He looked up. These papers claim Edward Morrison signed over power of attorney, updated his will, and transferred business ownership all in one appointment. That's legal, isn't it? Vanessa asked desperately. It's suspicious, Samuel replied, especially given what Dr. Chen just shared about Edward's condition. He turned to Dr. Chen. Was Edward evaluated for mental capacity yesterday? No. He was supposed to be with me at the hospital yesterday at 2 p.m. for his quarterly assessment. But someone canceled the appointment. Dr. Chen pulled out her phone. The cancellation came from a number registered to Vanessa Morrison. Every eye in the room turned to Vanessa. I rescheduled it, she stammered. Dad said he had a conflict. Dad didn't know he had an appointment, I said quietly. I've been managing his medical calendar for 6 months because he can't keep track anymore. You went into his phone and canceled it yourself, didn't you? Tears were streaming down Vanessa's face now. You don't understand. I needed this. The business is worth millions, and you were just going to split everything equally, like we're all equally important. We are all equally important, Marcus said, his voice shaking with anger. He's our father, Vanessa, not your personal ATM. I've done everything for him, Vanessa shouted. I visit him every week. I call him every day. You visit him once a month, I corrected. And you call him when you want something. I'm the one who takes him to every doctor's appointment. I'm the one who sits with him when he's confused and scared. I'm the one who holds his hand when he can't remember where he is. Because you're trying to control him, Vanessa accused. Because he has Alzheimer's, I said, my voice breaking. Because our father is sick, and instead of helping him, you exploited his confusion to steal his estate. Dr. Chen stepped forward. Mr. Morrison, I need to ask you some questions. Is that all right? Dad nodded, looking frightened and confused. What day is today? Dad hesitated. Friday? It's Sunday, Dr. Chen said gently. Do you remember where you were yesterday afternoon? Was I home? Or was that Tuesday? Dad's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, I can't remember. Do you remember signing legal documents yesterday? Documents? Dad looked at Vanessa. Vanessa said. She said it was important. She said Lauren knew about it. She said I had to sign quickly because... He trailed off, confused. I don't remember why. Dr. Chen turned to Samuel. In my professional medical opinion, Edward Morrison lacks the mental capacity to execute major legal documents without a thorough evaluation. Any documents signed in the past 6 months without medical clearance should be considered questionable at best, void at worst. Samuel nodded grimly. I'll be filing a motion tomorrow to have these documents declared invalid. And I'll be recommending that the state bar investigate Davidson Legal Services for taking advantage of a vulnerable adult. Vanessa sank into her chair, sobbing. I didn't mean, I thought. You thought you could trick a sick old man into signing away his estate, Aunt Carol said coldly. At his birthday party, no less. In front of his whole family. I think we should end this dinner, I said quietly. Dad, let's get you home. Dad nodded gratefully. He looked exhausted and overwhelmed. As I helped him stand, he gripped my hand tightly. Lauren, did I do something wrong? Everyone's upset. No, Dad, I said, fighting back tears. You didn't do anything wrong. Everything's going to be okay. The legal fallout took 3 months. The documents Vanessa had Dad sign were invalidated, not just because of his Alzheimer's diagnosis, but because the lawyer she used wasn't even licensed to practice estate law in our state. He was a notary who'd been advertising cheap legal services online, and he lost his notary license permanently. Dad's original will stood. Everything divided equally among his 3 children, with the business going to Marcus, who'd actually worked there for 20 years. The house would be sold and the proceeds split. His investments would fund a trust for his care and eventually pass to us equally. Vanessa tried to fight it. She hired a real lawyer who quickly advised her to drop the case after seeing the medical evidence and the circumstances. She canceled Dad's medical appointments, taking him to a questionable notary, and then publicly announced her theft at a birthday party full of witnesses. Her lawyer told her she was lucky we weren't pressing charges for elder abuse. Marcus and I decided not to pursue criminal charges. It wasn't mercy, it was exhaustion. We had enough to deal with managing Dad's declining health without adding a court case to the mix. Vanessa sent a letter 6 weeks after the birthday dinner. It was supposedly an apology, but it was really just excuses. She talked about financial stress, about feeling unappreciated, about how seeing Marcus and me get credit for taking care of Dad had made her feel inadequate. She never actually said, I'm sorry for trying to steal from my sick father. I didn't respond, neither did Marcus. Dad's decline continued over the next 18 months. There were good days when he remembered us clearly and bad days when he thought I was my mother. We moved him into a memory care facility when it became unsafe for him to live alone. He'd left the stove on twice and wandered out of the house in his pajamas at 3 a.m. Marcus and I visited 3 times a week. Aunt Carol came every Sunday. Other family members rotated through regularly. Vanessa didn't come at all for the first 6 months. Then she started showing up occasionally, always when she knew I wouldn't be there, always bringing expensive gifts Dad didn't need or understand. The staff told me she'd spend 10 minutes with him, take photos, and leave. One day, about 2 years after the birthday party incident, I arrived at the facility to find Vanessa sitting with Dad. He was having a good day, alert, conversational, almost like his old self. Lauren, he said warmly when he saw me, you just missed it. Vanessa was showing me pictures of her new house. Very nice. I looked at Vanessa. She at least had the grace to look ashamed. Could I talk to you outside? I asked her. We went to the courtyard. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I know you hate me, Vanessa finally said. I don't hate you, I replied honestly. I'm just sad about what you did, about what you chose. I was desperate. Stop. I held up my hand. Don't explain it again. I've heard all the explanations, and none of them justify trying to steal from your own father while he was losing his mind. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. I know it was wrong. I wanted to matter, to be important. You were important, I said quietly. You were his daughter. That was enough. That should have been enough. I ruined everything, didn't I? You made a choice that had consequences. Marcus and I aren't pressing charges, but we also aren't forgetting what you did. Dad might not remember. That's the cruel blessing of Alzheimer's, but we do. Will you ever forgive me? I thought about it honestly. I don't know. Maybe eventually. But forgiveness doesn't mean trust, Vanessa. You can visit Dad. You can come to family events, but you'll never have access to his finances or medical decisions again. That trust is gone. She nodded, crying quietly. I understand. I started to walk away, then turned back. Vanessa? If you really want to matter, stop showing up for 10 minutes with expensive gifts. Stay for an hour. Hold his hand. Listen to the same stories he tells over and over. That's what matters. That's what he needs. Okay, she whispered. I'll try. Dad passed away 6 months later, peacefully in his sleep. The Alzheimer's had progressed to the point where he no longer recognized any of us. The doctors said it was a blessing, that he wasn't suffering anymore, wasn't trapped in the confusion. At his funeral, Vanessa sat in the back. She didn't make any announcements or create any scenes. She just cried quietly and left before the reception. The estate was divided exactly as Dad's original will specified, an equal three-way split. No drama, no fights, no courtroom battles. Marcus used his share to expand Morrison Manufacturing. I used mine to fund Alzheimer's research and to set up a scholarship in Dad's name. I don't know what Vanessa did with hers. We don't talk. Sometimes I think about that birthday party, about how Vanessa stood up in that red dress, waving papers triumphantly, convinced she'd won something. How she planned so carefully to trick our sick father, to steal from her siblings, to take everything. And how quickly it all fell apart when faced with the truth. Dr. Chen told me later that she'd been documenting Dad's decline specifically because she had concerns about family members taking advantage. She'd seen it before, siblings fighting over estates, vulnerable adults being manipulated, families destroyed by greed. Your father was lucky to have you, she said. You protected him even when it cost you family relationships. But I wasn't protecting Dad from Vanessa just because it was right, though it was. I was protecting him because he'd spent his whole life building something for all his children, and I couldn't let one person's desperation destroy that legacy. Dad used to say that character is what you do when no one's watching, but I learned it's also what you do when everyone's watching. When your sister is standing at a birthday party announcing her theft, when your family is crying and begging, when the easy thing would be to stay quiet and avoid conflict. Vanessa thought she could exploit Dad's illness for personal gain. She thought no one would notice or that no one would care enough to fight. She was wrong. And that birthday party, which should have been a celebration, instead became the moment her plan fell apart, because some of us cared more about protecting our father than about keeping the peace. That's not something I'm ashamed of. That's something I'm proud of. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and broken promises. I'm sorry, Miss Catherine, Mr. Henderson said, sliding the document across his mahogany desk. But this is your mother's final will, properly witnessed and notarized just 3 weeks before her passing. There's nothing we can do to contest it. I stared at the paper, my hands shaking. Everything. The house I grew up in, Mom's savings, her jewelry, her investments. All of it went to my sister, Veronica. All I got was a single sentence. To my daughter, Catherine, I leave my blessings and best wishes for her future. Blessings and best wishes. After 34 years of being the daughter who stayed close, who visited every Sunday, who held Mom's hand through chemotherapy. This doesn't make sense, I whispered. Mom promised me the house. She said Emma could grow up there, that it would always be our family home. I understand this is difficult, Mr. Henderson said with practiced sympathy. But the will is clear and legally binding. Your mother was of sound mind when she made these changes. 3 weeks before she died, I looked up at him. She could barely remember my name 3 weeks before she died. The cancer had spread to her brain. The witnesses confirmed she understood what she was signing. Who were the witnesses? He glanced at the document. Veronica Morrison and Marcus Chen. My stomach dropped. Veronica is my sister. She's the beneficiary. How is that legal? She witnessed her mother's signature, not her own inheritance. It's unusual, but not illegal. And Mr. Chen is a notary public who confirmed your mother's mental capacity at the time of signing. Marcus Chen is Veronica's boyfriend, I said flatly. Mr. Henderson's expression flickered, just for a moment, with something that might have been discomfort. I see, that is concerning. But without proof of undue influence or mental incapacity, the will stands. I walked out of that office feeling like I'd been hollowed out. My daughter, Emma, was waiting in the car, her face pressed against the window. At 10 years old, she was perceptive enough to know something was very wrong. Mommy? She asked as I slid into the driver's seat. What happened? Do we get to keep Grandma's house? I couldn't speak. I just shook my head. Emma's face crumpled. But Grandma promised. She showed me the room that would be mine. She said we'd paint it purple together. I know, baby. I managed starting the car. I know. We drove in silence for a few minutes before Emma spoke again, her voice small and angry. Aunt Veronica did this, didn't she? Emma. She was always there those last few weeks. Always sending me out of the room. Always talking to Grandma alone. Emma's hands were clenched into fists. She's mean and she's a liar, and I hate her. We don't hate family, I said automatically, though the words tasted like ash. Grandma wouldn't have left you nothing, Emma insisted. She loved you. She told me all the time how you were her blessing. She paused. That's what the will said, right? Blessings? I glanced at her sharply. How did you know that? Because Grandma used to say it. Catherine is my blessing, and Veronica is my lesson. Emma frowned. I asked her once what it meant, and she said some people teach you what to be, and some people teach you what not to be. My eyes filled with tears. That sounded exactly like something Mom would say. 2 weeks passed. Veronica had already put Mom's house on the market. To settle the estate quickly, she claimed. She cleaned out the jewelry, the furniture, everything. When I asked if I could have Mom's recipe box, something with no monetary value but filled with memories, Veronica said it had been accidentally thrown out during cleaning. I knew it wasn't an accident. Veronica had always been cruel in small, deliberate ways. Emma had been quiet since the lawyers' meeting, spending hours in her room. I assumed she was grieving, processing the loss of her grandmother and the injustice of what had happened. I didn't realize she was investigating. Mom, Emma said one Saturday morning, walking into the kitchen with her tablet. I need to show you something. What is it, honey? Remember how Grandma got those cameras after someone tried to break in last year? I nodded. Mom had installed a security system, discrete cameras in the living room, hallway, and her bedroom. After she got too sick to manage the technology, I'd assumed Veronica had disconnected them. I don't think Veronica knew about the cloud storage, Emma said, her eyes bright with something between triumph and anger. Grandma showed me once how to access it on her tablet. She said it was our secret, in case anything ever happened to her. My heart began to pound. Emma, what did you find? She turned the tablet toward me and pressed play. The footage was from Mom's bedroom, dated 3 weeks before her death. Mom was in bed, looking frail and confused. Veronica sat beside her, holding papers. Mom, you need to sign this. Veronica's voice was patient but firm. It's just an update to your will. Catherine agreed to it. On screen, Mom's face was clouded with confusion. Catherine agreed? Yes, Mom. She said she doesn't need the house. She has her own place. But I'm going through a divorce, remember? I need help getting back on my feet. Divorce? Mom looked bewildered. When did you get married? A few years ago, Mom. You were at the wedding. Veronica's voice had an edge now. Just sign here. Catherine wants you to. I should call Catherine. Mom, she's at work. She said to just sign it. She trusts me to handle it. The video showed Mom's shaking hand signing the document, guided by Veronica. Then Marcus appeared on camera, notarizing it without asking Mom a single question about whether she understood what she was signing. The video ended. There are more, Emma said quietly, scrolling through files. 5 more videos of Aunt Veronica convincing Grandma to sign things. In one of them, Grandma asks for you 3 times, and Aunt Veronica keeps saying you're too busy to visit. I was shaking. Emma, how did you? I remembered the password. Grandma made it my birthday. Emma's voice cracked. She wanted someone to find these, Mom. She knew something was wrong, even when she was confused. Why else would she keep the cameras running? I pulled my daughter into my arms and held her tight while she cried. Then I grabbed my phone. Mr. Henderson's expression changed dramatically as he watched the videos. This is undue influence, he said, his voice sharp and professional now. Clear, documented undue influence of a person with diminished mental capacity. Mrs. Morrison repeatedly lied to your mother, claimed you had agreed to terms you never agreed to, and prevented her from contacting you for verification. Can we contest the will now? Contest it, Miss Catherine. This will is fraudulent. I'm obligated to report this to the State Bar. Mr. Chen could lose his notary license and potentially face criminal charges. And your sister, he paused. Your sister could face charges for elder abuse and fraud. I don't want her arrested, I said, surprising myself. I just want what Mom actually intended. Do you have any documentation of your mother's real wishes? I thought for a moment, then remembered. Emails. Mom wasn't great with technology, but she learned to email. We have years of correspondence where she talks about me inheriting the house, about Emma growing up there. Get me everything you have, Mr. Henderson said. With this video evidence and supporting documentation, we can have the fraudulent will thrown out and revert to the previous will, the one your mother created 5 years ago, before the illness. What was in that will? He pulled up a file on his computer. An equal split between you and Veronica, with a house specifically designated for you and a cash equivalent going to her. That was the will your mother maintained for 15 years, until 3 weeks before her death. The legal process moved quickly once we had the evidence. Mr. Henderson contacted Veronica's lawyer, who watched the videos and immediately advised her to settle. Veronica called me 2 days later, her voice venomous. "You had no right to spy on Mom." Emma found security footage. I interrupted. Footage of you lying to a dying woman with dementia, telling her I agreed to be disinherited when you know I never said any such thing. Silence. "You manipulated her," I continued, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. "You isolated her from me, you lied to her repeatedly, and you did it all for money." "I needed that money." Veronica's voice cracked. "Do you know how much debt I'm in? I have nothing, Catherine. You have a good job, a nice apartment, and you have a conscience you've been ignoring. Mom trusted you. I trusted you." "What do you want?" she asked bitterly. "To see me arrested?" "I want you to agree to enforce Mom's real will, the one from 5 years ago, before you started manipulating her. Equal split, with me getting the house. And if I don't? Then Mr. Henderson submits the video evidence to the district attorney and you face criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud. Marcus loses his notary license at minimum. At worst, you both go to jail." Another long silence. "I'll agree to the settlement," she finally said. "But don't expect me to apologize." "I don't," I said. "I expect you to stay away from me and my daughter, permanently." I hung up. 3 months later, Emma and I moved into Mom's house. We painted the bedroom purple, just like Grandma had promised. We planted roses in the garden, Mom's favorite. We found the recipe box in the garage, not thrown away, just hidden, and spent weekends baking Mom's cookies and pies. Emma's school had a Heritage Day project where kids presented someone important in their family history. Most kids chose grandparents or great-grandparents. Emma chose her grandmother, but she also talked about integrity, honesty, and standing up for what's right even when it's hard. "My grandma taught my mom to always tell the truth," Emma said in her presentation, which I watched on video later. "And when someone tried to steal from us by lying, my grandma made sure we could prove the truth. She left us cameras and passwords and evidence because she knew that truth always matters more than money." She got an A+. That night, as I was tucking Emma into her purple bedroom, she looked up at me with serious eyes. "Mom, do you think Grandma knew that she was leaving us clues?" I thought about it. About Mom teaching Emma the password, showing her the cloud storage, keeping those cameras running even when she was too confused to remember our names. "I think your grandma knew exactly what she was doing," I said, kissing Emma's forehead. "I think she knew Veronica couldn't be trusted, and she made sure the truth could come out even after she was gone." "I miss her," Emma whispered. "Me too, baby. But she's still taking care of us, isn't she? Through the house, through the evidence she left, through all the love she poured into this place." Emma nodded, then smiled slightly. "And through her recipes. I'm making her chocolate chip cookies for the bake sale tomorrow." I laughed. "Of course you are." 6 months after we moved in, I was going through Mom's things in the attic when I found a letter tucked inside an old photo album. It was addressed to me in Mom's handwriting, dated 2 years before her death, before the cancer, before the confusion. "My dearest Catherine, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope you're in the house we both love. I'm writing this now while my mind is still clear, because I know what's coming. I've always known what Veronica is. I love her, but I'm not blind. She takes shortcuts. She lies when it's convenient. She sees people as resources. You're different. You give without expecting anything in return. You stay when others leave. You're the daughter who chose love over convenience every single time. The house is yours. It's always been meant for you. I've made sure of it in every legal way I can. But if something goes wrong, if Veronica finds a way to manipulate things after I'm too sick to fight, remember that I prepared for that too. I installed those cameras for more than burglars. I set up the cloud storage with Emma's birthday as the password for a reason. That girl is smart and good, just like her mother. If you need proof of truth, she'll find it. Truth always wins, Catherine. It might take time, but it wins. The house is yours because you earned it through years of love, not because of blood or obligation. You earned it with Sunday dinners and chemotherapy appointments and late-night phone calls when I was scared. Veronica will try to take it. She takes everything she can, but I've made sure the truth is there, waiting to be found. Live in this house, Fill it with love. Teach Emma to bake my recipes. Plant roses. Be happy. That's your real inheritance. Not the building or the money, but the knowledge that you are exactly the daughter I always hoped you'd be. The locks had been changed. I stood on the porch of the house I'd lived in for 3 years, my key turning uselessly in a mechanism that no longer recognized it. Beside me, my 13-year-old daughter, Mia, clutched her school backpack, her face pale with confusion. "Mom," she whispered, "why isn't the key working?" Before I could answer, the door swung open. My brother Derek stood there with his arms crossed, his expression cold. "You need to leave," he said simply. "Derek, what are you talking about? This is our home." "Actually, it's my home." He pulled a folded document from his pocket. "Dad left the house to me. I have the deed right here. You've been living here rent-free for 3 years, and I've been generous enough to allow it. But that generosity ends today." My mind reeled. That's insane. Dad left the house to both of us. Joint ownership. "I have the will." "You have an outdated copy," Derek interrupted. "Dad changed his will 6 months before he died. The house is mine solely. You have until 6 p.m. to get your essentials out. The rest of your stuff will be placed in storage, and you can collect it once you've paid the storage fees." "Storage fees?" I repeated numbly. "Derek, you can't just—" "I can, and I am. You want to fight this? Take me to court. But until then, you're trespassing." He looked at Maya with something that might have been guilt, but not enough to change his mind. "I'm sorry it has to be this way, but I have my own family to think about. Jessica and the kids are moving in next week." "Uncle Derek," Maya's voice was small but steady. "Grandpa told me the house was for me and Mom. He said it was ours." Grandpa was confused at the end, "Sweetie. The legal documents say otherwise." He stepped back. 6 p.m. Don't make this harder than it has to be." The door closed in our faces. We spent that afternoon frantically packing what we could fit in my car: clothes, toiletries, important documents. Or so I thought. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely fold Mia's school uniforms. "Mom, what about my art supplies and my books?" Mia stood in her bedroom doorway, tears streaming down her face. "We'll get them from storage, baby, once I figure this out." I didn't know how I'd afford storage fees when I could barely afford rent somewhere else. At 5:58 p.m., we loaded the last bag into my Honda. Derek watched from the window, his wife Jessica visible behind him, already measuring the living room with her eyes. We drove to a Motel 6 on the highway. It was all I could afford, $67 a night, which would drain my checking account in less than 2 weeks. Mia sat on one of the 2 double beds, still clutching her backpack, and started to cry. Not the loud, dramatic crying of a child, but the quiet, hopeless crying of someone who understood exactly how bad things were. I held her while she sobbed, my own tears falling into her hair. "It's not fair," she choked out. "Grandpa loved us. He wouldn't leave us with nothing." "I know, baby, I know." But the truth was, I didn't know. Dad had been sick for a long time before he died. Dementia, strokes, periods of lucidity mixed with profound confusion. Could he have changed his will? Could Derek have convinced him somehow? I thought about the will I had, the one from 8 years ago, leaving the house equally to Derek and me. But Derek had a document too, apparently more recent. Without money for a lawyer, how could I fight this? The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face my desk job while my life was falling apart. Instead, I spent hours on the phone with legal aid services, getting waitlisted, rejected, and told my case wasn't urgent enough for immediate help. Mia went to school because I didn't know what else to do with her. She needed normalcy, routine, something stable while everything crumbled around us. When she came home that afternoon, she was quieter than usual. She sat on her motel bed and pulled her backpack into her lap, staring at it with an odd expression. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Something's been poking me all day," she said slowly. Through the inside lining of my backpack. She unzipped the main compartment, then ran her fingers along the fabric. "There's something in here, like inside the lining." I watched as she carefully worked her fingers into a small tear in the interior fabric, widening it until she could reach inside. She pulled out a manila envelope, flat and worn. "What is that?" I asked. Mia opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were several documents, official-looking papers with legal letterhead. "Mom," she whispered, her eyes wide. "This is from Grandpa's lawyer. It's addressed to you." I took the envelope, my heart pounding. The date on the letter was from 7 months before Dad died, 1 month before Derek claimed he changed his will. Your father was of sound mind when he executed these documents. He made it clear that the family home should go to you and your daughter, Mia, in trust, with Derek receiving equivalent value in liquid assets from his estate. Please keep these documents in a safe place. Your father specifically requested that you hide them where Derek would not think to look, in case of any future disputes. If you need to reach me, my contact information is below. Sincerely, Robert Martinez, Esquire. Attached were copies of Dad's will, the property deed showing the house held in trust for me and Mia, and documentation of Dad's assets. I stared at the papers, my hands shaking. He hid these in your backpack? He must have, Mia said, her voice filled with wonder. Remember that day in the hospital, like a month before he died? When he asked to see my backpack and said he wanted to fix the tear in the lining, he took it to his bathroom for, 20 minutes. I did remember. I thought it was strange at the time. Dad could barely hold a pen. How was he going to repair a backpack? But he'd seemed so insistent, and it had been one of his lucid days, so I'd let him have the small dignity of trying to help his granddaughter. He hadn't been fixing the tear. He'd been hiding our future inside it. Mom? Maya's voice pulled me back. What does this mean? It means, I said slowly, reading through the will again, that Derek lied. The house is ours. It's been ours all along. I called Robert Martinez first thing the next morning. Miss Patterson. His voice was warm but concerned. I've been trying to reach you for months, when you didn't respond to my letters. What letters? I sent 3 letters to the family home address, informing you of your father's will and asking you to contact me to begin the probate process. My stomach sank. I never got any letters. My brother Derek has been living there. He must have intercepted them. There was a heavy pause. That's mail fraud. Has he claimed ownership of the property? He kicked me out 3 days ago, told me Dad changed his will and left everything to him. Did he show you documentation? He said he had a deed. I didn't see it up close. Miss Patterson, I have the original will here in my office, properly executed and notarized. Your father was very clear about his wishes. Derek receives $150,000 in cash and investments, equivalent to half the estate's value. You received the house, held in trust for you and Mia. There is no version of the will that leaves the house solely to Derek. So what he showed me was fake. Either fake or possibly an earlier draft that was never properly executed. Either way, it's not valid. The house is legally yours. His voice hardened. And if Derek has been intercepting legal mail and forging documents, that's several crimes. What do I do? Come to my office this afternoon, bring the documents your father hid. We'll file an emergency motion to restore you to the property and begin probate proceedings. If Derek refuses to leave, we'll have the sheriff escort him out. That afternoon, while Mia was at school, I sat in Robert Martinez's office and told him everything. He reviewed the hidden documents, comparing them to his originals. These are perfect copies, he said with satisfaction. Your father was smart. He knew Derek might try something like this. He looked up at me. Did your father ever express concerns about Derek's behavior? I thought back to those last months. He told me once that Derek had been asking about the will a lot, pushing him to get his affairs in order. I thought Derek was just being practical, helping Dad prepare. But now you realize he was trying to manipulate a dying man. Robert's expression was grim. I met with your father 6 times in his last year. Every time, he was clear about his wishes. The house was for you and Mia. He talked about how you'd taken care of him, how you'd sacrificed your career to be his caregiver. Derek barely visited, according to your father. That was true. I'd been the one managing Dad's medications, taking him to appointments, sitting with him during his worst days. Derek would stop by occasionally, always with some excuse for why he couldn't stay long. But apparently he'd stayed long enough to plan how to steal my inheritance. The emergency motion was filed that afternoon. 2 days later, I stood outside the family home again, this time with Robert Martinez, a sheriff's deputy, and a court order. Derek answered the door, his face going from annoyed to shock when he saw the sheriff. Mr. Patterson, the deputy said formally, I have a court order restoring Jennifer Patterson and her daughter, Mia, to this property. You need to vacate immediately. That's ridiculous. Derek sputtered. I have the deed. You have a fraudulent document, Robert said calmly. The court has reviewed the authentic will and property trusts. This house belongs to your sister. You've been living here illegally for 3 days, and you've committed mail fraud by intercepting letters from my office. Derek's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. 3 certified letters were sent to this address over the past 4 months, Robert continued. All returned unopened, bearing signatures that don't match Ms. Patterson's. That's a federal crime, Mr. Patterson. Jessica appeared behind Derek, her eyes wide. Derek? What's he talking about? You said the house was yours. It is mine. Derek insisted, but his voice lacked conviction now. Dad changed his will. Show me the will, Robert said. Show me the properly executed, notarized, and witnessed will that leaves this property to you. Derek's mouth opened and closed. It's in storage. No, it's not, I said quietly, because it doesn't exist. You lied, Derek. You lied to me, to your wife, probably to yourself, but Dad knew you would. That's why he hid the real documents where you'd never think to look. Where? Derek asked, his voice bitter. In Maya's backpack, I said, watching his face crumple. In the lining. He hid them the day you brought your family to the hospital and spent the whole visit talking about how you needed a bigger house for your kids. He heard you, Derek. He knew exactly what you were planning. The sheriff stepped forward. Mr. Patterson, you have 2 hours to remove your personal belongings. If you're not out by then, you'll be arrested for trespassing. Derek and Jessica left within 90 minutes, their car packed with hastily thrown together bags. Jessica wouldn't look at me. Derek stopped at the door, his expression somewhere between anger and shame. You've always been Dad's favorite, he said bitterly. No, I corrected. I was Dad's caregiver. I was the one who showed up. There's a difference between being a favorite and earning someone's trust. He left without another word. Mia came home from school to find me sitting in the living room, our living room, surrounded by the boxes Derek had started packing with our belongings. We're home, she asked, her voice small and hopeful. We're home, I confirmed. She dropped her backpack, that miraculous backpack, and ran into my arms. The legal proceedings took another 3 months. Derek tried to fight it, hiring a lawyer who quickly dropped the case once he saw the evidence. The forged deed Derek had shown me turned out to be a draft document from years earlier that had never been properly executed. He'd found it in Dad's papers and tried to pass it off as legitimate. The mail fraud was harder to prove, but handwriting analysis on the returned certified letters showed that someone other than me had signed for them. Derek eventually accepted a plea deal, returning the $10,000 he'd taken from Dad's bank account in the final weeks and agreeing not to contest the will in exchange for avoiding prosecution. He got his $150,000 inheritance as Dad had intended. It was more than generous, considering what he tried to do. We never spoke again. 6 months after moving back home, Mia and I were planting flowers in the garden, Dad's favorite roses, when she suddenly stopped digging and looked at me. Mom, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think Grandpa knew? Like really knew that Uncle Derek would try to steal the house? I thought about it. About Dad's lucid moments in those final months, about the careful way he'd hidden those documents, about his insistence on fixing Mia's backpack himself. I think Grandpa knew exactly who Derek was, I said carefully, and I think he loved him anyway. But he also protected us from him. That's what parents do. They love their children, but they're not blind to their faults. He was really smart, Mia said softly, hiding the papers in my backpack. Uncle Derek never would have looked there. He was smart, I agreed, and he knew you were smart too, smart enough to figure it out when we needed it most. Mia smiled, then returned to her digging. After a moment, she spoke again. I'm glad we're home. Me too, baby, me too. That night, I found an old photo album in Dad's study. Inside was a picture of Dad with Mia, taken about a year before he died. On the back, in his shaky handwriting, was a note. To my brilliant granddaughter, trust yourself. The truth is always there if you know where to look. Love, Grandpa. I showed it to Mia. She held it carefully, tracing the words with her finger. I found it, Grandpa, she whispered. I found the truth. And somewhere I'd like to think Dad was smiling, proud of the smart, determined young woman his granddaughter was becoming. The house wasn't just our home anymore. It was our inheritance, not of property or money, but of the values Dad had lived by: truth, determination, and the courage to fight for what's right. Derek had tried to steal our home, but he couldn't steal what Dad had really given us, The knowledge that we were loved, protected, and strong enough to uncover any lie. That, more than any house, was worth fighting for. The coffee shop meeting should have been my first warning sign. My sister Rachel texted me on a Wednesday afternoon, "Need to talk, important. Coffee tomorrow at 10? I assumed it was about Mom's upcoming birthday, or maybe she needed help with something reasonable. So I rearranged my morning meetings and showed up at our usual spot downtown. Rachel was already there, looking radiant in athleisure wear that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Her 3 kids, Sophia, 8, Mason, 5, and baby Lily, 18 months. We're miraculously calm, absorbed in their tablets. "Thanks for coming," she said, hugging me. I ordered their usual lat. "No problem. What's going on?" She took a deep breath, her perfectly manicured hands wrapping around her cup. "I need to ask you something important, and I need you to really hear me out before you say no." My stomach tightened. "Okay. You know how hard motherhood has been for me," she began. 3 kids in 7 years. I haven't had a moment to myself since Sophia was born. I've lost myself completely, Danielle. I don't even know who Rachel is anymore outside of being Mom. I nodded sympathetically. I can imagine that's really hard. So I've been talking to my therapist, and she thinks I need to take time to rediscover myself. Like real time. 6 months, maybe a year. That sounds healthy, I said cautiously. Are you thinking of doing a weekly class or something? Yoga? Art? No. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. I'm thinking of traveling. Southeast Asia, maybe Europe. Just me, backpacking, finding myself again. Like we did in college, remember? I blinked. Rachel, you have 3 kids. You can't just backpack through Asia for a year. That's where you come in, she smiled brightly. You could watch them. I laughed, assuming it was a joke. Good one. But seriously, what's your plan? Is Marcus taking paternity leave or something? Her smile didn't waver. Marcus works 60 hours a week. He can't be a single parent. But you work from home. You're a freelance graphic designer. You have a flexible schedule, and you have that big 2-bedroom apartment all to yourself. The laughter died in my throat. Wait, you're serious? Completely serious. Think about it, Dani. The kids love you. You'd be amazing with them. And it's only temporary, just until I figure out who I am again. Rachel, I work from home, but I still work. I have clients, deadlines, projects. You can work around their schedules. They're in school most of the day anyway. Well, except Lily, but she naps a lot. A year is not temporary, I said, trying to keep my voice level. And I have a career. I can't just put my entire life on hold to raise your children while you find yourself. Her expression hardened. So my mental health doesn't matter to you? Of course it matters, but there are other solutions. Hire a nanny. Put the kids in extended daycare. Have Marcus adjust his schedule. Take a weekend away every month. But asking me to give up my career for a year? That's insane. I'm not asking you to give it up. Just adjust it. To work around 3 children I'd be solely responsible for. Rachel, do you hear yourself? She set down her coffee cup with a sharp click. I should have known you'd be selfish about this. Selfish? I repeated, incredulous. Yes, selfish. I'm drowning, and you're worried about your little art projects. They're not art projects, they're my career. I have a mortgage, bills, clients who depend on me, and I'm your sister who needs you. Her voice had risen enough that other patrons were starting to look. But fine, I guess I'll just have to suffer through my depression alone. I hope you can live with that. She grabbed the kids and stormed out, leaving me sitting there in shock with 2 untouched lats. I thought that was the end of it. I sent her a text later that day. I'm sorry you're struggling, but please understand I can't give up my career. Let's talk about realistic ways I can support you. She didn't respond. 2 days later, my mother called. Danielle, Mary, what is this I hear about you refusing to help your sister? I closed my laptop. Mom, did Rachel tell you what she asked me to do? She said she needs help with the children while she works on her mental health, and you flat out refused to even consider it. She asked me to quit my job and become a full-time nanny for up to a year while she backpacks through Asia. There was a pause. She said it was just a few weeks, maybe a month or 2. She said 6 months to a year, Mom. And she wants me to move the kids into my apartment and take care of them full-time while she travels internationally to find herself. Another pause, longer this time. Well, would a few weeks really be that hard? You work from home. I work from home, not at home doing nothing. I have deadlines, clients, a business I've built over 8 years. Rachel is family, Danielle. She's struggling. Don't you think your career can take a backseat for a few weeks to help your own sister? Mom, she didn't ask for a few weeks, and even if she had, the answer would still be no. I'm not a free childcare service. I'm very disappointed in you, Mom said coldly. Your father and I raised you to help family. She hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, fury and hurt warring in my chest. Rachel had completely twisted the story, making herself the victim and me the villain. My father texted an hour later. Your mother is very upset. Please reconsider helping Rachel. Family comes first. I didn't respond. On Monday, I was in a video call with a major client, a corporate rebrand worth $45,000, when my building's front desk called. Ms. Peterson? I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a woman here with 3 children claiming to be your sister. She says it's an emergency, and she needs to bring the kids up. My blood ran cold. Tell her I'm in a meeting and can't be disturbed. I did, but she's insisting. In the background, I could hear Rachel's voice rising. I'm her sister. This is a family emergency. I'm in an important client meeting, I said firmly. Tell her she needs to leave and call me later. She's saying she'll wait in the lobby. Ms. Peterson? My client's voice came through my laptop speakers. Is everything all right? I plastered on a smile. Yes, I'm so sorry. Just a small interruption. Where were we? We barely resumed the presentation when there was pounding on my apartment door. Danielle, open this door right now. My client's eyebrows rose. Do you need to handle that? I'm so sorry, I said, mortified. Can we reschedule? I'm dealing with a family situation. Of course. How about Thursday? The moment I ended the call, I marched to my door and yanked it open. Rachel stood there with all 3 kids and several bags, looking triumphant. How did you get up here? I told them it was an emergency. Which it is. She pushed past me into my apartment. Marcus and I had a huge fight. I can't be there right now. The kids and I need to stay here for a few days. Absolutely not. Danny, please. Just a few days while things cool down. No, Rachel. You manipulated building security to force your way into my home during an important business meeting. You've been lying to our parents about what you asked me to do. And now you're trying to move yourself and 3 kids into my apartment without permission. I'm your sister. And I'm a person with boundaries. You can't steamroll my entire life because you're unhappy with yours. Sophia started crying. Mason hid behind Rachel's legs. Baby Laylee, sensing the tension, began to wail. Rachel's face hardened into something ugly. Fine, you want to be selfish. Be selfish. But when I end up in the hospital because of my mental breakdown, that's on you. When my marriage falls apart, that's on you. When these children ask why Aunt Danny doesn't love them enough to help their mommy, that's on you. She scooped up Lily and grabbed Sophia's hand. Mason, come on. Clearly we're not welcome here. They left, and I stood in my destroyed living room. My client presentation interrupted, my reputation potentially damaged, my family turned against me, and I did something I hadn't done in years. I called a lawyer. What you're describing could constitute harassment, my lawyer, Janet, said the next day. Especially the forced entry into your building and the disruption of your work. The fact that building security has it on camera helps. I don't want to sue my sister, I said miserably. I just want her to stop. Then we send a cease and desist letter. It's formal, it's legal, and it makes it clear that further contact regarding childcare demands or showing up at your home or workplace will result in legal action. My parents will disown me. Your parents don't pay your bills or run your business. You do. And you have the right to protect both. I authorized the letter. It was delivered 2 days later. My phone exploded. Mom, ALAAW Willier? You sent your own sister a Lily G.L. Fatreat? Dad, this has gone too far, Danielle. Rachel, I can't believe you. You're actually threatening to sue me for asking for help? You're insane. Marcus, Rachel's husband, who I hadn't heard from once during this entire debacle. What the hell is wrong with you? Rachel is having a mental health crisis, and you're making it worse. I turned off my phone and finished my work. The breaking point came 3 days later. I arrived at my parents' house for what I thought was a birthday planning meeting for Mom. Instead, I walked into an intervention. Mom, Dad, Rachel, Marcus, and even Rachel's therapist, a woman I'd never met, sat in a circle in the living room. Sit down, Danielle, Mom said. What is this? This is us trying to help you see how your behavior is affecting this family, the therapist said in a calm, clinical voice. I laughed. Actually laughed. You're staging an intervention for me because I won't quit my job to raise my sister's kids. Because you're showing a severe lack of empathy and family commitment, the therapist corrected. Rachel has shared with me how you've repeatedly refused to help during her mental health crisis, gone so far as to threaten legal action, and shown no concern for your nieces and nephew. Did Rachel also share that she demanded I give up my career for up to a year? That she lied to her parents about what she asked? That she forced her way into my apartment building during a major client presentation? The therapist glanced at Rachel, who suddenly looked very interested in her hands. Rachel, the therapist said slowly, you told me she refused to watch the children for a few weeks during a difficult period. It evolved, Rachel muttered. Evolved into what, exactly? Silence. I looked at my parents. Did she tell you she wants to backpack through Asia for a year? That she wants me to move her kids into my apartment and become their full-time caregiver while she finds herself? Mom's face had gone pale. Rachel? My therapist said I need to prioritize my mental health. I said, the therapist interrupted, her voice sharp now, that you need to find balance and implement self-care practices. I suggested weekly therapy, possible medication, and asking family for help with occasional babysitting. I never, ever suggested abandoning your children for a year. I'm not abandoning them. I'm leaving them with family. Without that family member's consent, I said. After lying about what you were asking for. After manipulating our parents. After forcing your way into my home and disrupting my business. The therapist stood up. Mrs. Morrison, I think we need to have a private session to discuss some things. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, I apologize. I was given a very different version of events. She looked at me. Miss Peterson, I'm sorry you were put through this. She left, Rachel scrambling after her. Marcus sat frozen, his face red. I didn't know she'd asked you for a year. She told me it was a month, maybe 6 weeks. She lied to all of us, I said quietly. Mom started crying. I called you selfish. I told you I was disappointed. Because Rachel lied to you, I said, sitting down next to her. She's clearly struggling more than any of us realized. But that doesn't make it okay to manipulate everyone or try to force me to give up my life. Dad cleared his throat. What do you need from us, Danielle? I need you to respect my boundaries. I love Rachel. I love those kids. But I can't sacrifice my career and my life to enable her avoidance of her problems. If she needs help, there are real solutions: therapy, medication, marriage counseling, hiring childcare, Marcus adjusting his work schedule. But Danielle gives up everything is not a solution. That's fair, Dad said quietly. That's more than fair. I'm sorry we didn't listen. That was 2 months ago. Rachel is in intensive therapy now, real therapy, with a new therapist who doesn't enable her manipulation. She and Marcus are in marriage counseling. They hired a part-time nanny. She sent me a letter last week. A real, handwritten letter. Danielle, I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to try. My new therapist helped me see that I wasn't having a mental health crisis. I was having a personal responsibility crisis. I wanted to run away from my life instead of fixing it. What I did to you was wrong, all of it. The manipulation, the lies, the ambush at your apartment, the intervention. You were right to set boundaries. You were right to protect yourself. I'm working on being better, being honest, being an actual adult who deals with her problems instead of trying to dump them on other people. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry. Love, Rachel. I cried when I read it. Then I called her. Hello. Her voice was tentative, uncertain. Thank you for the letter, I said. You read it? I did, and I appreciate it. Really. There was a long pause. I was so horrible to you. Yes, I agreed. You were. But you're getting help now. That matters. Can we maybe have coffee sometime? Just us. No kids, no agenda, just sisters. I smiled. I'd like that. And Danny? I saw your new client announcement on Instagram. The Morrison Hotel rebrand? That's huge. It is, I said, warmth flooding my chest. The client I'd almost lost during Rachel's apartment ambush had not only stayed but referred me to their parent company. It's the biggest project of my career. I'm proud of you, Rachel said, and I could hear tears in her voice. I should have said that before. I'm proud of you for building this amazing career, and I'm sorry I tried to destroy it. I love you, Rachel, but I won't let anyone destroy what I've built, not even family. I know, she said softly, and you shouldn't. That's what makes you strong. We talked for an hour, really talked, maybe for the first time in years. She's still my sister. I still love her. But I also love myself enough to know that setting boundaries doesn't make me selfish. It makes me sane.